I was recently in Atlanta visiting Highland Woodworking, and I had an opportunity to play with a Festool Kapex Miter Saw back in one of their back storerooms, all by myself and out of sight of all the store personnel. You see, I had insisted that if I was going to appraise the Kapex, it had to be an honest appraisal compared to my current miter saw. Now, it was a dark, overcast day, and the lighting wasn't great for the video. Sorry about that. But I learned a lot, and a few light bulbs eventually went on above my head. And frankly, I had a few surprises. Let's take a look. The folks at Highland Woodworking asked me to take a look at the Kapex Miter Saw. And I resisted a little bit because I've got a really good miter saw. It's gonna take a lot to impress me, but let's take a look. While at first blush, the saw seems fairly compact, the capacity is actually quite good. It'll cut 3.5 inch thick material, well actually just 4/100ths of an inch shy of 3.5 inch thick material, and it'll actually cross cut 12 inches, which is a little bit more than my current saw, so I kind of like that. And Festool's thoughtfully provided a mechanism where you can adjust the saw so that if you're cutting some wide trim, you can actually go up to 4.75 inches with a piece of trim standing up. We'll see how to do that in just a minute. Here on the left-hand side of the saw, we have the arbor lock, which locks the arbor when you're doing a blade change, and it also disables the motor, which is a nice safety feature. Also over here on the left-hand side is the storage for the miter fast tool. We'll cover that in just a minute, but what I wanted to show you over here is the tall miter latch. If you pull the motor head assembly forward, you can flip this latch down and slide back, and it will engage and lock the motor in this position. By doing that, putting a spacer against the fence, you can put in a pretty tall workpiece right here, and what'll happen is you'll engage the blade behind the flange in the thickest area here so that you can cut a wider workpiece. Pretty slick. To disengage this, just pull this lever down, pull back, and you're back into normal operating mode. There are several controls on the right-hand side of the Kapex saw. The first is just this slide lock, which allows you to lock the sliding mechanism for when you're transporting the saw. And this locking knob locks the head down also for transport. But much more interesting than that is this little knob, which is the depth limit knob. By pulling that knob forward, you can limit the depth of how far the blade will go down, which is perfect for non-through cuts. You can cut dados and half-lap joints easily on your miter saw. Now, a lot of miter saws will do that, but something I've never seen before, which I really like, is just by turning this knob, you can adjust the depth and fine-tune it in, which is perfect. I like that a lot. The other thing that's on this saw, on the right-hand side, is the bevel adjust. Simply unlock the bevel locking lever, and you can just dial in your bevel angle. And it's very easy to move, and you can get it right where you want it and lock it into place. All those controls are on the right-hand side. Now let's move around to the back of the machine and see the rest of the controls. On the back of the machine, we have a switch here to control the lasers. And like a lot of Festool equipment, the motor is variable speed. And this is the thumb wheel control for the variable speed. We have dust extraction here, and there's a cord wrap on the back for the machine. But of particular interest back here is your bevel lock and bevel control. Flipping this lock lever up allows you to bevel the unit. But this dial is the bevel range selector. In this position, the saw will bevel left 45 degrees and back to 0. In this position, it will bevel both directions, both left and right. And in this position, it'll over bevel to 47 degrees left and 47 degrees right. Like most miter saws, the miter angle is controlled up front. I like this little lever action though. This is locked into position. To release that, just push down and then use your thumb to push down on that little trigger and you can move this to any angle. And of course there's positive stops provided at all the normal stops: 0, 15, 22.5, 30, and 45 degrees. And the saw will move to 50 degrees miter angle on the left and 60 degrees miter angle on the right, which is more than some saws out there on the market. That's certainly a feature. This half-degree cursor mark is really handy. There's 2 outside marks, and if you line those up with any 2 of the black marks underneath, the middle arrow will be at exactly 1/2 degree. This makes it really easy to set half-degree settings. The laser system is very bright and shows the kerf line both on the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the blade, and certainly seems to be accurate. The Miter Fast tool allows you to take an exact reading of either an inside corner or, by extending these arms, an outside corner, and then transfer that angle to the Kapex without any math. Once you get your reading, simply tighten up this dial, set one of the arms against the fence, and line up the laser with this track. That should give me a precise cut. When evaluating a tool, you can look at specifications, you can read reviews, and you can look at YouTube videos, but there are just some things that you don't learn until you can try the tool out for yourself. And I have discovered a feature about the Festool Kapex Saw that I like best of all. And let me just show you real quick what that is. Notice how fast the blade stops turning? When you're working and you're making a lot of cuts, that's a huge time savings. Now, you know, from a safety standpoint, you should never raise the blade on a miter saw until the blade has stopped spinning, because you can mar your workpiece or worse, cause some type of kickback of the offcut material. But this saw stops in what appears to be about 2.5 or 3 seconds. 1, 2 seconds maybe. Saw I have currently takes about 10 seconds for the blade to spin down to a stop. And that's a lot of wasted time to me. I really like that. Overall, I like the Kapex. The question is it really worth the extra money? So let me recap for you what I think are some differentiators on the Kapex versus other miter saws. Number one, this bevel adjustment is the easiest to use and most accurate of any saw I have ever used. That alone is worth the price of admission. The other feature, and I can't stress this enough, is the slow down and stopping of the motor at the end of a cut. Again, you don't want to raise a miter saw blade out of a cut until the blade has stopped spinning. And with this, you won't need to be tempted to do that, and it will speed up your work. Love that feature. Third, I think the variable speed motor is actually kind of a cool feature. And the reason is because I see a lot of cuts coming out of miter saws, mine and others, that have burn marks on the end of the wood. And I think with this, you could dial in the speed of the blade to eliminate those burn marks in soft resinous woods like cherry or maple. and that would really be a money saver. And last, although I'm not going to cut a whole lot of rabbits and dados on a miter saw, occasionally I need to cut one or two, and it's just not worth the time and trouble to set up a dado stack on the table saw or set up a plunge bit on a router or something to make dados that way. I could set this depth limit, dial in the depth real quick, and make the cuts in no time at all on this miter saw, and it would be more difficult to do on the miter saw I have now. So overall, I think any one of those features would make this saw worth the price of admission to me, and when you put them all four together, it makes me wish I'd have bought this instead of the one I have now.